Lawyer Tom to Kevin Seifert. The standard isn't actually you have to see the ball. The standard is conclusive visual evidence. One could certainly argue that seeing the ball carrier's arms clearly across the line to gain before the carrier is down is conclusive visual evidence.
Well, that's an interpretation. Like, to me, like if it has to be clear and obvious, I don't know how you can.
But on the goal line, you don't always see the ball. You see where he's holding the ball, and you see his arms cross it. You don't always necessarily see the ball.
I think
maybe we need to change the rule.
Do.
By the way, how long? Kevin Seifert's in studio, ESPN.com. How long do you think? Mahomes is not even 30 yet.
I know.
So we keep thinking they're on borrowed time because they're not as dominant as they've been, but yet
they lost one game.
Here they are again. They lost one game. So, I mean, how long can this go?
I mean, like, people keep wondering when Andy Reid's going to retire, and that would be the first domino to fall because as great as Mahomes is, and this shouldn't hopefully take a single thing away from him. Like, there's just, I think, a general acceptance that he's been made better by having Andy Reid as the coach. And I don't know what the succession plan there is. If there is one, Andy Reid's not like, he's not like in his 80 years old or anything. I don't even think
he seems to be enjoying it still, doesn't he?
Seems to be enjoying it. I think
it's all gravy now.
Yeah, like he's.
How much does he make? Do we know?
No, coaches.
He should make $20 million a year minimum. Does he?
I don't know. Coaches' salaries, as we found out with the Kevin O'Connell extension, are pretty well kept behind the scenes. But that, to me, like in terms of how long they can go, is like that's the first question to ask. Is like, how long is Andy Reid going to go? Because he's shown that,
no doubt.
Like I mean, it helps to have a great quarterback, but like this wouldn't be happening if they didn't have a great coach as well.
Well, what strikes me about him too, again, is, and maybe it's because he's now been doing it long enough, and he can't get ripped ever now, right? With the number of titles and was it 7 straight AFC title games? That he just, I mean, he'll get a little cranky every once in a while, but nothing really seems to frazzle
Jolly
him.
Giant.
Pretty much.
And I'm sure behind the scenes he gets feisty, but like, and he was always a really decent guy. Even going back to Green Bay, the people that were around him in Green Bay really enjoyed being around him, and so like that's never been an issue where he was ever like particularly edgy, at least in public. But he's, I mean, like. If you coach for as long as you've coached and at near the end of your career, I guess you've reached this level, like you might want to ride it as long as you can.
Why not?
Until somebody tells you can't.
Well, my guess is he'll ride it until Mahomes says I've had enough or gets hurt or something.
Well, that would be like,
that's it.
I mean, if Mahomes is 29, like I mean, he's going to play at least 5, 6 more, 7 more years.
I mean, I don't think he'll get bored, will he?
I mean, how many? You know, in 5 years from now, how many more titles will they have? And like, will they have already passed the Patriot? Like, that would be the goal, is like to try to pass the Tom Brady Patriot era.
So it sounds like you're assuming they're going to beat the Eagles. Are you?
No, I'm not assuming that, but like, it's been proved time and time again that you can lay out a matchup on paper and say, here are all the reasons why the Chiefs like don't match up well. But then as long as it's close in the end, like that's where the Mahomes and Reid are just so far ahead of everybody. And it's, you know, you saw that as they were killing the clock, and not only the play you mentioned, but there was a play earlier where, you know, Mahomes doesn't really run a lot anymore, and they just call a straight, like, kind of quarterback off tackle play, and he gains it. And like, he still can really do that. But they just don't use it very often. And so, and then just the level of calm and confidence that he brings to those moments is like, it's same as Brady. Like there's never a reason to doubt that Tom Brady was going to pull out the games even when he didn't. And it's become that way with Mahomes. And so until like people are talking about like, in the Bills game, like if they had somehow made that 4th down and score a touchdown, like you're going for 2, because you have to get a 2-point or 2-score lead against them, because you like it's just a given.
It's inevitable.
They'll come back on the 1 score at least, and then you have to hope that the onside kick or something doesn't work out. And so until a team reaches that level of execution and precision in those key moments, then the Chiefs will have an upper hand.
Our intrepid amateur reporters are doing the research for us, and what they're finding is media reports indicate Andy Reid makes $20 million a year, which would make sense based on his success.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, that was I'm not like well versed in coaching salaries, because even when reports come out, like
they're not always accurate.
Yeah,
right.
and like I know that people were trying forever to find out how much Bill Belichick made, and I think the assumption was over $20 million.
Yeah.
But in a lower end coach would be at $10 million plus, and maybe a few get hired under $10 million when it's their first time job. But like that's the range. But the numbers are really hard to come by.
Okay, so post surgery and second surgery, how much weight? How far? How thin? How slender? How slight did J.J. McCarthy become?
Well, he was listed at 219, and I was told he lost at least 20 pounds, and probably more than that. But I don't have
on the sidelines. He looked like he was a 15-year-old kid,
frail. Yeah, and so that and it wasn't. There wasn't any like illness or like any like severe reason for him to drop as much weight as he could. It just kind of like I think like he had actually put on a lot of weight to get to 219 in the first place between Michigan and Combine, and so like it'll get back there, and I'm told he's already kind of like in terms of like his actual scale weight moving back up, and so there was only so much he could do from a physical standpoint, and when you're my age and you don't do a whole lot physical, you gain weight, but when you're young and you're not really expending a lot of energy and you're probably not eating a lot and doing all that, you end up losing weight, and so it was described to me as not unusual or concerning, but but it got your attention. It got attention, and it will take some time to come back, and that's the other part. It's like you don't like he's not in like Twinkie mode where like you're trying to put on weight to for like a wrestling class or something like that, or to make your wrestling
reach
class.
A certain weight. Yeah, exactly.
Like he's going to have to do it the right way, and it's going to take time. And you would hope that between now and the start of OTAs, which are in May, that he could get to a point where like he's kind of fighting weight.
Do you believe it is not yet resolved that physically, not just on the basis of the weight, but also the recovery of the injury, that it can't be just assumed that if he doesn't start from the beginning of the season, it won't be because he's not all the way back? How much do we know? How much do you feel like the Vikings know about how prepared he is to hit the ground running from the first day of training camp?
In terms of his knee, the physical state of his knee, I don't sense any concern about that.
Okay.
And they'll know that even they'll be able to do enough OTA stuff and long before that to find out if they have reason to be concerned. My guess is even if he's 100% cleared, they'll ease him back into it because it's just been a while since he's done a lot of football stuff. But I haven't heard any concerns about whether the knee will be healed to a point where he can compete for the starting job in training camp. The things that we've all talked about are like, did he get enough out of this virtual reality thing that he did during the season?
Yeah.
Did he get enough by just sitting in on meetings? Did he need, did he missing out on not throwing the ball in practice,
right,
which is a kind of a basic thing, or leading a huddle, even if it's a scout team huddle, did that, keep his development to a point where like you can't be certain that he'll catch up on all that stuff? So those are and then finally, like, yes, he probably knows the scheme in terms of writing it up on a whiteboard or like manipulating it in virtual reality, but like, are they, he was getting there last summer, but is he going to be able to make enough progress in terms of like getting the scheme down cold that you'd feel like he's a contender for the week one job?
Kyle from Isanti, wasn't the second surgery actually just an injection, or did he actually go under the knife? I'm confused now because I feel like there have been two different versions to that story. You and I have talked about this before.
Yeah,
how do you characterize it?
He had surgery in the summer after the injury, and then was did the 6 weeks where you don't really do much of anything, and then as he started sort of gradually ramping up his activity, there at some point it was in November at some point where swelling occurred. So they went in and took a look at what the swelling was caused by, and you can call that a procedure, you can call that a surgery. I never intended for it to be as controversial as it became, because I think there's a lot of people who were very upset to hear that there had been even a mild complication. But after they went in, when arthroscopically probably, they determined that the swelling could be treated by an injection, and that's what they did. So they did not, when they did the procedure to investigate the surgery
what was causing the swelling.
Yeah, they did not change anything. They didn't adjust anything.
Didn't snip anything else out.
My just from a linguistic standpoint, I believe surgery is the common word for when you go into a doctor's office and they start working on you. But the bottom line is that they investigated the cause of the swelling, found it to be something that could be treated by the injection, and so they did it.
Do we know it's the injection of what? Do we know?
Blood-rich platelets.
Blood plasma stuff? Is
that
what
like that?
Yeah.
Blood-rich platelets, okay. I think that's what it's called. And it just kind of helps the healing process and gets the inflammation down. And so my understanding is it worked. And so now he's, as of the end of the Vikings playoff run, he was back on the field doing on-field training.
I've got a follow-up JJ question I want to get to on the other side of a break. First,
Fan wants to give you a shot to put a grand in your hand with our national cash contest, and the 4 o'clock keyword is money. Go to KFAN.com and enter the keyword money.
So the professional football Final Four, the title round weekend, included the Washington Commanders. Mm-hmm. Fair to say they have a running quarterback. By that, I don't mean he can't throw, but he is capable of running the ball, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. The Philadelphia Eagles, when healthy, running quarterback?
Oh, yeah.
Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, even when he wasn't healthy.
Buffalo Bills,
yeah,
running quarterback.
Yeah.
This year more than ever with planned runs.
Yeah.
The Kansas City Chiefs, not as much as he used to, but he sure as hell was big with his legs again the other night.
Right.
So the moral of the story is, and Lamar Jackson, obviously, there are others. So this is all preamble to how much do you think they will ask and how much should they ask J.J. McCarthy to be a running quarterback, to make that, with the way the rules are now set up, you do not have to get hurt if you're a running quarterback. You really don't. That running plays, if you have a quarterback who has the legs to do it, you're taking something away from your team. You're hamstringing your team if you do not implement that as part of the package.
The part that I think really helps are in these high leverage plays, whether it's like 3rd and 2 or 4th and 1 or 3rd and 8 in the red zone on a goal to go, like gotta have it plays, especially in playoff games. That's where it's great that Lamar Jackson can run on first down too. I'm not taking anything away there, but to me, there's very rare occasions where you have a Lamar Jackson type who's going to run 15 times a game or whatever, and that's a big part of the offense. To me, where it's reasonable to hope for and to get is in those like in Josh Allen's case, one of the plays you can think about on 3rd and 2 or 4th and 1 is just slamming him up the middle. And part of it's he's 250 some pounds. And we just talked about JJ McCarthy's weight. He's never going to be
he weighs 100 pounds less right now.
Yeah. But so it'd be tough. It'd be tough to think that he ran some in college.
He did.
And he's definitely athletic, and he ran a couple times in the preseason game, and that's really the only evidence we have. But even if you're not exposing him 10 to 12 times a game because he's not Lamar Jackson, and neither is Josh Allen either, and I don't know that that's really their offense. If you have somebody who's skilled enough, I don't think it's a matter of is it in your system. It's a matter of is your quarterback skilled enough and have the right physical attributes and sort of the mentality to be somebody you trust to basically be a running back on those high leverage plays. And I think the jury's just out on that. We just don't know if that's, put aside whether O'Connell would consider it which he should enter that in. We can and certainly have that discussion. But the first step of that is this the guy you want to do that with?
Yeah. And then there's the complication of coming off injury.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Early.
And what the kind of the thing that I'm talking about is something that might not come up you might not have a 4th and 1 in a given game. You may not need to think of him in a RPO in a goal to go situation, but is your evaluation of him even include the possibility that he can be. I mean, Jalen Hurts is Jalen Hurts is like 250,
big guy,
squats like 900 pounds. Like that's a guy that you can be hard to tackle. And I'm not taking anything away from JJ, and I'm also leaving open the possibility, the real possibility that we don't really know his full skill set yet at the NFL level. But that's where it has to start, is not so much like, are you willing to do it, but can he do it?
Texture guy, this is, let's see the area code here. This is 323. We're all happy for the
California.
Is that California?
Yeah, I think it's LA.
Yeah.
We're all happy for the young signal caller, but he's not even the best quarterback on roster. That's your guy, Danny Dimes, who incidentally will be the second consecutive purple quarterback to win the President Trump Comeback Player of the Year award. Boom, boom.
Wow.
Mic drop.
Is the MAGA giving out that award?
It's a matter of time.
Yeah. So the interesting part of the Daniel Jones thing is he's not really on the roster. I mean, he only signed, so let's play it out like, okay, we think JJ will be ready at some point in the season, maybe week 1. So we don't think Sam Darnold is, in that circumstance, maybe we don't bring Sam Darnold back. Let's bring Daniel Jones back. And then, do you try to get him signed before he hits free agency? Does he want to sign before he hits free agency? Is there a high number you have to hit before he does that? What's his market going to be? Like, we've talked so much about what Sam Darnold's market might be on free agency, but what's Daniel Jones' market? What would that be on he'd probably be at worst the second best quarterback.
I think
available.
You're right.
So, and on a again,
not a great class,
a great class,
right.
And also, but more importantly, not a great draft class. It's not like, like this past year where everybody who needed a quarterback could go draft one. And so that's a really interesting sidebar to that too. If they kind of determine that would be their next option, what would it take to get that done before he even hits free agency?
So free agency is the big question moving forward. We want to fill some holes on the, especially starting with the interior part of the offensive line. Are there guards there to do that? Are there cornerbacks that for the second straight year might not be massive names, but like we did a year ago, can fulfill important roles for this team? If they're smart about it, are those folks out there at prices that we can reach?
I mean, they are right now, but like the hard part is, and this happens every year with free agency, people look at the list of people that are available, like the Chiefs guard, Trey Smith, and like, okay, right now their contract's set to expire, but like, are they going to re-sign? Is he going to re-sign with the Chiefs? Is he going to get franchised?
I think he'd like to, probably. Wouldn't he? All things being equal.
Well, I mean, but then again, like,
how much money do they have?
Yeah,
I don't know.
I mean, some, but like, and you could structure it for a short term for sure. But like, if you like, there's always that temptation. Like, what would you be worth as the best guard on the market? A lot more money than probably what the Chiefs' at least initial offer would be. And so, but I don't know. But my point is that every year, like that.
Yeah, it sounds good in the front end.
That pool shrinks to the point where like you're like, ugh, like there's, and you remember that like teams don't let good players leave. Like they don't, like, for the most part, like they either franchise or make them an offer to stay. And so like that's the really hard part about relying, routinely and annually on free agency.
What's the date by which we have to make a Darnold decision?
I think the last day for franchise tag would be February 4th. And then that sort of window where you can start negotiating with other teams.
That's right around the corner.
It would be like March 11-ish, 13-ish, around there. So, we're looking at, less than 6 weeks.
Less than 6 weeks. I agree with this sentiment. This is 763 guy. After watching the last 4 games, anyone should conclude that without a quarterback who can threaten the line of scrimmage, you're not really trying to win. That's what I think. I think that's the revolution. I really do. I think that's where the game is changing. And a long time ago, I was one of those guys who said, you can't do that. They're going to get killed. But the way the rules are set up now, they're not going to get killed.
Yeah, just slide and then
it's
out of bounds.
It's a weapon. It is because, and again, I don't mean Lamar Jackson. Not everybody can be Lamar Jackson. I get that, but I just mean as a running play. I believe you have to, if you have someone who has the legs to do it, even selectively, that you're not doing your job anymore, because I think that's an advantage that each of those teams that ended up in the Final Four absolutely have. That takes a lot of pressure off of many other parts of your offensive game.
It's just one more. I mean, if you can go into a game and you don't have to worry about the quarterback leaving the pocket, consistently, then that's a big thing. And so there was a time, and I don't know if it's been updated, but there was a study done of all the quarterback injuries, as the running quarterback thing was starting to become a hot topic, and most of them were happening in the pocket. Like,
yeah, right.
A lot of the
No
injuries
question.
is when you're
Yes.
like defenseless and you're looking downfield and you can't protect yourself, and like
Somebody goes low to the legs.
Yeah, or like it's just a freak thing,
Yeah.
or like you get driven into the ground. Like that's where a lot of the injuries are unfortunately happening.
That's true. Any other threshold dates? Are we going to have any shocking Vikings news in the next week or two? Or is it relative?
Shocking news? No, I mean, like we're still kind of waiting on
Who's in and who's out?
Well,
who we want to sign and who we...
To me, like the question that's hanging over after last week, O'Connell got his contract extension.
Oh, yeah.
The report was Kwesi Adofo-Mensah was in negotiations.
What's the delay?
That's
the question. Is there one?
Is there a question or is there a delay?
Yeah, I'm wondering.
I think no. Like in terms of whether he's coming or going, like if he was going, I think that would have happened already, and I don't have any reason to think that was the case. And there wasn't the deadline, I think, real or perceived, to get his deal done as opposed to O'Connell because of this whole trade thing and just the angst that was involved there. But like I mean, the Vikings, like they invited these questions by not doing them together as a pair, whether it's just coincidence and a matter of course, and this guy was not in town, or that guy, that whatever. But you have a coach and a GM on the same type of contracts. The coach has been re-upped, the GM is not.
Thanks for coming in. I want you to be on next week, but I'm not going to mock you if you don't want to come in. It'll be Super Bowl week.
I mean, you could come out my way. I mean, you went to Grzinski yesterday. All he had to do was stop and turn right, or was it left?
Left,
as he's
actually,
leaving
yeah.
from his
Well, from the parking lot, it would be right. I guess technically, yeah.
Heated parking garage to the feed bag at Target Center.
Very, very true, David. Well, we'll figure that out next week because it will be Super Bowl week.
Yeah.
You're aware of that.
And we'll talk
about and you're not going.
No, not going. So I'll be here to give you all my takes.
I'm looking for some hockey insight from Lou Nanne. He's going to be coming up next. We'll get his reaction to the Kaprisov news. We'll also get more Kaprisov reaction from Billy Guerin, who will join us at 5:30.
Well, she sneaks around the world from Kiev to Carolina. She's a sticky-fingered filcher from Berlin down to Belize. She'll take you for a ride on a slow boat to China. Tell me, where in the world is
Lou Nanne?
He's brought to you by our good friends at Kemp's, and he joins us via the Connecticut Water Systems hotline. I'm guessing. Oh, you're in Toronto, aren't you?
Right. I'm doing the game tomorrow night.
That's right. So you're Dateline Toronto. How many games are you doing on this trip?
4. I'm going to do Toronto, Montreal, Ottawa, Boston.
This is all, and so this will all be on FanDuel, correct? The used to be Bally, now it's FanDuel, the regional sports outlet that is home to the Minnesota Wild and the Minnesota Timberwolves as well. So you get back and get to do some analysis at a really good time, Luigi. It's obviously an interesting time for this team in the wake of the news that broke earlier today that they are going to sit Kaprisov down and he's going to undergo surgery on Friday. What do you make of the big announcement? Let's start there.
Well, I think the fact that he's hurt, whatever the injury is, and obviously it's not a groin because he's undergoing surgery. And I think they probably sat down and made a decision, say, if we do the surgery, whatever kind it is, how long will it take? And if we wait till the end of the year, what about that ramification? Well, if you wait till the end of the year, he probably couldn't. He'd be playing off and on, or maybe, who knows, maybe play for Wild and off for the rest of the year. And they took a look at the schedule, I'm sure, and they saw a 2-week break coming up for the Four Nations tournament. So if the thing takes 6 weeks, the tournament's off 2. That means he'll only be out 4 weeks rather than 6 weeks. 4 weeks, you figure 12 games. And unfortunately, it's coming at this time because I just did a little work and the way I figured it out, they were in position on this road trip, in my mind, to win 3 out of 4 games. Now, which 3, I don't know, but I've been watching Toronto play a little bit, Ottawa play a lot, and Bruins play a lot. And I saw Montreal play a little bit, and I thought they really could win 3 out of 4. And if they win 3 out of 4, now, in my mind, that would have really solidified a playoff position. That would have that would have put him in a position to be really tough for anybody to knock him off. And so now they're going to have to do it, but they're going to have to do it without their best player.
Yeah, it's a conundrum. It's a very difficult decision. I said at the start of the show, though, in all honesty, and again, we don't know what it is. You thought originally it might be groin. It's a mysterious lower body. Who knows what it might be? But if you go on the assumption that the surgery itself will clear him of it, or gives him a decent chance of being cleared of it, I say do it this way, even if, as you say, it comes at an inopportune time, Louie, because in the end, let's face it, playoff positioning is nice, but in the end, the most important thing is having as close to 100% of Kaprisov as you can. And if you play it out the hard way, like, all right, he's getting a little better, it's going to take some time, we keep throwing him out there, he's a tough guy, he'll handle it, but at the end of the next 3 weeks, you're going, God, he's really not getting all that much better. He's not the same guy. He proclaims himself at 60%. That's not good enough. I would rather bite the bullet now if indeed the doctors convince you we do this procedure. This is going to largely resolve it. And, as you mentioned, you're still going to have 16 regular season games before the Cup playoffs begin April 19 that he would be able to participate in.
Another factor that maybe is the most important, what if whatever injury this is, and we don't know, but what if it was an injury that got worsened to the point where you couldn't resolve it as well as they could by doing it right now? And that could affect his career, not just the year.
Good point.
So there's no question that this is the best time to do it. There's no doubt at all about it. And I just hope, more than anything else, I'm hoping that it's a surgery that he can heal from without any effects afterwards, or, that continue for years, much less months.
So I hate playing the speculative game. Well, are we talking knee? I mean, what do we think? When you think surgery, you think could be knee, we're going to drain some stuff, or we're going to, snip some things or whatever. But what's your best educated hockey guess at this point?
Well, when you think surgery, what you said right away, you think about the knee. We always speculated a groin, so if it wasn't a groin, was it a hernia or is it a bone somewhere?
Right,
that would be the three things, right? And so whatever it is, a hernia surgery wouldn't be bad. I've seen a lot of those done.
Yeah.
A knee would take a lot more time. And frankly, I didn't see him hurt his knee in any games or see him favoring the knee. So I don't know what they're operating on, but hopefully, and they must feel this way because they're saying that he's going to be out 4 weeks, which means 6 weeks because of the break, which in their mind can't be as severe a surgery as
that's true. That's a good point.
A knee would be. A knee automatically. If you're operating on a knee, I've had a knee operation, and I was out 12 weeks. You're that's a medial collateral. So you got to think that it's not a knee.
Yeah, I think that's a very that does make, if you use just sort of good deductive reasoning, you're probably right. And then I don't know, maybe we are talking about a hernia. Who's to say? Yeah. Very difficult to say. When you watched him since he came back, did he look sluggish to you? Did he look rusty? What stood out to you when you watched him?
But just as we talked before he came back, we expected rust, and there was definitely rust there. You're out for a month, and I don't care who you are. You're not going to step back in the lineup like you haven't missed an hour. He was out for a month. That affects everything: your timing, your hands, your reactive ability, the whole works. You just, you got to get back into it. It's like anything else. You can't be away from it for a month and not have some residual effect. And I watched a couple of those games, and they won the Chicago game. Fortunately, they had a couple of losses, but what went through my mind immediately was how long is this going to take to get back to Kaprisov that went out, And, you try and talk to yourself during the game and say, well, that looks better. Yeah, he's coming.
Sure.
You want to be so hopeful that you start almost seeing things that you're not seeing. But there was no doubt in my mind that if he was healthy, that it wasn't going to take too long, because he's just a generational talent.
The home woes continued, obviously, before the Blackhawks game against the Flames. There's a lot to discuss from that game in particular. But more generally, is there a common theme for you now that the team has slid a little bit, especially at home, but overall, is not going in the right direction? Is it different things, different nights, or do you see anything specific that is sort of a common trait of why this club does not look as impressive as it did earlier?
Well, a big thing that happened was we had, 4 games by Gustafsson that were totally opposite to what he was playing before. What was it? Gave it like 23 goals in 4 games or something. Here's a guy that was around 2 goals again to the game average, and all of a sudden you're going to over 5. So that was the first thing, because once you give up a goal, you got to get 2 to win. You give it up 5, you got to, you got to get up 2 all the way along there. You're not going to win those games. And then I think they start feeling the effects of on defense of not having Brodin and Spurgeon. You're 2 of your 3 best defensemen out of the lineup. You're going to feel that. You can't continue to go with. If you look at it, you take out Spurgeon and Brodin, and they're the top 2, with Faber, your top 3 defensemen. And so now you're putting in 7, 8, and 9. There's a distinct difference there. So the play in your own zone is substantially different. You don't get the puck out. You don't relieve the tension. The pressure is quickly. You don't generate the offense as you would by good breakouts, fast breakouts with speed coming up the ice. There's so many things that happen. It all generates from your own zone. And when your goaltender's not playing well and you're not moving the puck out fast enough or good enough and you're not defending as much, you got big problems because you're going to give up a lot of goals, which they did. And then on top of that, you're not getting scoring. You're getting scoring from the guys' points that usually do, and that's Boldy, Rossi, and Eric Sinek got a few, and that was generating most of it. And then you lose Johansson, who was producing better this year than he did last year. It almost took away his second line. So you had quite a different look to your lineup and to the production than you'd been seeing earlier. So you put all those things together. It is so close in this league. Look at the teams in both conferences that are out of the playoffs by a game or 2. All of a sudden, you got your 8 in each conference, but then you've got like at least 4 teams in each conference that are within striking distance that could get in the playoffs too. And especially in the Eastern Conference, even worse than the West, because at least you got a little drop-off in the West after a couple non-playoff teams right now. But boy, oh boy, the competition is so good. You can't afford these kind of mistakes and unproductive games.
Louie, Dateline Toronto, he'll be on the TV analysis as the Wild take on the Maple Leafs tomorrow night. In fact, that game, of course, can be heard on the flagship FM 100.3 as per usual, starting at 6 o'clock Central Time. That's tomorrow night. I want to get your reaction to the pushback, the concern regarding the team's reaction when Flower got nailed and whether they stuck up for him enough, etc. Guerin was not very happy. He's going to join us at 5:30 today. But there was an interesting reaction from to that criticism from, of all people, Foligno, right, who's usually one of the guys who's going to be front and center when it comes to sort of standing up for teammates. But here's what he said. I want to get your reaction to it. The pushback, we're trying to focus on winning a hockey game, and we just gave up 2 penalty kill goals. And then that happens. Rossi and Zuccarello jumped on Rasmus Anderson's back and stuff. If you go out and punch him in the face, and if they score 3 power play goals, it doesn't look so great. So, I mean, it sucks that you punch a Hall of Famer in the face. Something's got to be done, but we get them we got them one more time. I like the way he's I think part of, to me, what he's trying to say, Louie, is I know what people want us to do, but if we get too crazy with it, we end up cutting our nose to spite our face. What do you think, looking back on that whole deal?
I think, as I always think, he's the smartest guy of all. As that stuff goes, because he knows when to do it. He does it when he has to do it, and he's exactly right. And by the way, if you see the whole play, Fleury actually, hit Anderson in the face first. What do you expect Anderson to do? But on top of that, do you want Zuccarello and Rossi in a fight? You didn't have any of your fighters basically right there. And one thing that I was disappointed in is that they single out the team for not responding then. This team has responded for years now as well as anybody in the league. You never flip. I mean, they got enough guys, even on Hartman, they got enough guys that'll fight any day of the week. So that game was too important to start thinking about something like that. That certainly, I watched that game. That had no basis on that team losing that game. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear you say that, because I get it. I get into these debates and with a lot of old school hockey people, and they don't want to listen to me, and I get that, because I'm not always. I still know the league better from like the mid to late 60s than I do now in terms of names. I grant that point, and that's why we lean on folks like you heavily, and Russo to a degree as well. But I try to say you're my backup on this, because generally you're an old school guy in a lot of ways, man, and you've been around hockey forever. But I think you're smart about this stuff, which isn't that you just let people take shots at every member of your team, but that you have to be smart about not just worrying about the battle, but winning the war as well. And I still think there's some old school people, honestly, Louie, who would rather lose 2 games in a row than not stand tall and say, yeah, you know what though, we got our pound of flesh. They showed up, we showed them. They're never gonna be intimidated by us again. It's like, well, but winning is the name of the game. Winning, I always thought, was the best way to get back at the other team, isn't it?
That's exactly right. And by the way, if you don't think that Foligno's going to take care of Anderson the next time they play, I mean, that's just a given.
Yep.
But see, Foligno has the right thought process. Here's what happened over the years. And I hate to go back and talk about the olden days, but for years and years and years, until about 10, 15 years ago, when somebody hit you, or wrong, or hit your goaltender or something, you didn't go right back right away and get the 2-minute instigating penalty and the extra penalty and go and do it. You waited your time. It used to be check the number, which means you're getting them later. Check the number. It's all a timing process. You gotta think. The first thing is you got to win the game. It's not imperative that immediately something's going to happen.
Right.
That's why the dumbest thing in the game today is a guy making a good body check, and somebody going over and getting in a fight with the guy that threw the body check. That's what the game's all about. It's about contact. The worst thing I saw was the other night was I watched some of these other games too to see what's going on, and I'm watching the Ottawa game, and Cousins from Ottawa, they were playing Toronto, and Cousins, who is a little bit of a cheap shot artist, but he came across to hit Quinlan that just got called up from the Maple Leafs, and it was a knee on knee hit. Okay?
Yeah, right.
Now, both of the players are down on the ice, and they're hurt and injured. And there's a guy who comes over from Toronto and stands and waiting for Cousins to get up so he can fight him. They had to help Cousins off the ice. I said, how stupid is this? How stupid is this game getting when they do that?
Yeah, that's a great point.
He's waiting to fight with him, standing there to get in a fight with him. Guys are, trying to shove him away. Let him get this guy off the ice. Cousins is out for the rest of the year, I guarantee you, with that knee injury, and he's standing there to fight him.
Yeah, that doesn't. There's in every sport there's a doofus factor, man. You have to be smart, and you make a really important point that I'm not sure fans understand, is that you can bide your time. The notion that it has to be resolved and taken care of and evened up immediately is a sentiment that has grown over the years, but I don't even think it matches reality, and it isn't smart. Like you said, just because you don't at that moment doesn't mean there might not be some justice exacted somewhere down the road.
Do you know what's even nobody talks about, or the hidden factor? Anderson knows now he's going to have to answer for it. Just like remember when Dumba had the hit and Tkachuk next game came back. Dumba hit one of his centermen at that time. Tkachuk got him next game. In fact, he got in the fight and Dumba tore the pectoral and he was out for 8 weeks or 10 weeks. But do you know that nobody even talks about the fact that Anderson knows, and he's got to wait till he plays the Wild, that he's got to fight somebody. He doesn't know what's going on. And he's going to be thinking about this all the way along. I mean, and it's so much smarter. Like what Foligno's letting these guys know the way it should be and what is done, because he's as good as there is in the league about it. He knows when to respond, how to respond, and he knows the effect of responding. And that's why this other stuff, when I was reading this and listening to even to Hines, I said, "Are you kidding me?"
Yeah.
I mean, no. That was, you didn't lose the game because of somebody didn't punch somebody in the face after Fleury got hurt. That game was lost even before that.
Right.
And it's certainly, you did have a chance to get back into it. And if you'd have gone back in the power play and give them another goal, then yeah, you definitely had no chance to come back. You still got to take your chance to get back in the game. I mean, you got to win games now. Personal pride is something, but the name of the game is winning the game. After that, you can do all the shenanigans you want to do when you want to do them, but don't let them get in the way of getting a victory. You know, it's part of getting the victory. It gets your team together, and those guys, they're all talking about it. But they'll be saying to the bench, "We'll get him. We'll get him. There's a time to get him," but it wasn't then, and that's why, I was disappointed in making such a big deal out of that reaction.
Music to my ears. I want to get your reaction to something Russo wrote in his piece about Kaprisov. One player who really has a chance to strut his stuff with Kaprisov out is Ogren, who turned 21 on Tuesday and has no goals and 2 assists in 5 games since being recalled after Marcus Johansson was concussed. Quote from Guerin: "I'd still like to see him play a little more free. He tends to be a little robotic at times, and he's got too much skill for that, so I'd like to see Ogren use his speed a little bit more, get better in scoring areas." What do you think?
Well, I think so too, and I think first of all, I'm going to tell you, I think that the Wild will be looking for a trade now. I really do. I think they were looking before, and this might expedite that. But I do think that Ogren shows that he has capabilities. He's got speed. We've seen a shot. Last year he produced more in the Swedish league than he had before. Looked like he's coming. Well, he's got to be thinking right now, and he's not the only one. By the way, they're asking me some of the things to talk about tomorrow night. Who would you like to start the game with? One of the things probably will be Hartman, because I really like Hartman as a player. He isn't productive this year, but he's the kind of guy in this instance, even more than Ogren, in my mind, that could be a turning point, because he has proven time and time again he can score goals besides being, effective physically. And he's been in somewhat of a slump. And I like the guys that have scored in the past that go in the slumps. And I'd bet on them coming out of the slump rather than the guy that's never scored. All of a sudden he has a great year and expecting that to repeat. So Hartman to me has got more of a history of scoring than Ogren. Ogren has to start playing looser and freer and with more of an offensive mindset than he's got right now. When you're young and you're kids and you've already been sent down a couple times, whether they say it or not, the one thing they worry about is getting scored against. So that tends to restrict them a little bit from their reaction to go as quickly as they should go. And they got to get through that mindset. And if he gets a goal or two, that would help it. But until he gets through that, he's still going to be fighting. I don't want to give up any goals, because he thinks that that's going to be the thing that'll take him out of the lineup.
At Toronto tomorrow night for your Wild, at Montreal the next night, Saturday at Ottawa, and then Tuesday, Feb 4, at Boston. You're doing all 4, correct?
Right.
That's a nice little road trip, man. A great opportunity to get back into the analysis business. You'll be doing the TV stuff via FanDuel, and, of course, all those games can be heard right here on the Fan, starting with the Maple Leafs game tomorrow night. I did notice, Louie, there's a place where in ESPN where they have the schedule, and then they have ticket availability, and they'll give you like price range or like tickets as low as. So in Toronto, tickets as low as $74, Montreal as low as $51, Boston as low as $52, Ottawa as low as $15. Quite a bargain in Ottawa, apparently.
Well, and that's why they're going to get a new stadium in Ottawa. They're already talking about it. I think it's going to move downtown. Or one thing he was saying he would do, and they needed been trying for years now. And the previous owner, when he passed away, and this new guy bought it a couple of years ago, that's one of the things he said will happen. Yeah, that stadium, I was just there for the World Junior Championship. It is so far out and so tough getting in and out of there. Yeah, it's like the Met before we had the more roads going into the area, 4-lane and getting in. The Met became much better to get in and out after they widened 494. But I'll tell you, the Ottawa thing, it's not going to be a success. It's tough to get fans out there unless they're winning because it's so far out and it's not easy to get in and out of.
Have fun on the road trip. We'll be watching tomorrow night. Thanks as always, Luigi. Great analysis.
Okay, I'll talk to you next week from Boston. You take care. Thanks.
Sounds good. Thanks, Luigi. That is Lou Nanne, brought to you by our good friends at Kemp's. We'll get kind of the management version of the Kaprisov story from Bill Guerin. He's going to join us from Toronto as well in about 30 minutes. We have Top 5 at 5 right around the corner. Guardsy will give us a quick status report on what he intends to include. Bradshaw and Brian KFAN text line, by the way, if you want to react to what Louie had to say, that is 64686. What do we have coming up?
Kirill, Gophers tonight, and we'll hear a little bit of what Chris Finch thought about the performance last night.